come once again to discuss things.
Let's go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is Steve Baxi and Deadpoolzilla. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
We are continuing Holiday Month at the request of Steve Baxi, and today we have a short story to review because I had to pick something, and this is a short story that is stuck in my memory for many years at this point, and I wanted to talk about it. And I think this will be the only thing that has ever discussed this story, on YouTube at least.
I can't wait for the 1,000,000 views.
Yep. Okay, so, Steve, what are we reviewing today?
Today, we were reviewing a short, 10 or so page, but not even that, story by Orson Scott Card called Homeless in Hell, a Christmas story.
Yep, and this is really interesting for me because I initially read this story, I want to say 2003, 2004.
Is it that old?
Yeah, he mentions that Y2K in this, dude.
He does, doesn't he? Damn.
Yeah. So, I read this in 2003, 2004, and just the way in which I read it is, so bizarre and random, because I was a little criminal at 13, 14, and I had LimeWire on my family computer.
Oh, shit, you're confessing?
Yeah, I know. And I was downloading shit. I think I might have been downloading, Christmas music or something, for some godforsaken reason.
Sure, Christmas music. That's
what
the kids are calling it.
No, I downloaded porn and music and stuff too, but this specific instance, I was downloading Christmas music, and I think it was because I cannot imagine any other case under which this story, as a .txt file, would end up on my computer. What else would I have to have been downloading for a fucking Christmas story to end up on my computer? So yeah, this was just a TXT file. I didn't even know who wrote it. I didn't know who wrote it until last week when I went searching for it to see if I could pick it for this show. And then I Googled it and I was like, oh, it was written by a dick face. So
the moment when I found out it was Orson Scott, Orson Scott Card, I was like, oh, that asshole.
Yeah. So this is that really interesting thing of that perfect kind of Christmas thing where you have a sweet childhood memory and then you go back to it and you're like, oh my god, everything is awful. So yeah, this is a short story by an absolute dick face that I did not know was by an absolute dick face when I picked it. Until the exact moment I picked it, and so that should be interesting to talk about. So we'll get into it, but just general impressions. We'll start with Steve, who hates everything. Steve, what do you think of this story? Just completely, we'll leave Orson Scott Card off the table for the time being. It's an hour-long podcast. We'll get to him. But what did you just think of the story itself?
I thought it was all right. I liked a lot about it. I thought in places it was... The word choice and writing style was weird in places. Dialogue exchanges felt almost kind of fanficky to me in certain places. Orson Scott Card, I don't think, writes the best dialogue from most of what I remember of Ender's Game, so maybe that's just a thing for him. Most of that's what took me out from it. I thought it was all right. I enjoyed it. I thought you could do a really good Shane Black movie out of this.
Okay. Deadpoolzilla, what'd you think of this story?
Honestly, when I was reading through it, I was like, did I go to fanfiction.net? Did I stumble into this?
Yeah.
Not good fanfiction either.
Wow.
like the dialogue in here was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Card just really does not know how to write a human being. I totally forgot about that.
Wow.
Because like seriously, like the dialogue from Ender's Game is like, I can't like. Are you just antisocial, Mr. Scott Card, or what?
See, maybe it's just me. I didn't think the dialogue was like too terrible. I mean, it's very sparse dialogue at that. There's like what 3 conversations between Nick and the narrator here.
Part of it is also just like random word choice and stuff. Like there's that conversation really early on, and they're like, I don't see them, so how can I dodge them? Oh, you philosopher, you. Like, what kind of response is that? It's just weird. What does that even mean?
Oh, fair enough. I don't know. Some of this, like,
Who talks like that?
Santa Claus, apparently.
You philosopher, you. Who says that?
See, I don't know, man. I like this story. I remember, like, this.
Too. I'm just saying.
This is something that stuck with me, and yeah, I'm looking at that you philosopher you right now. I don't know, something about this just stuck with me, and the dialogue just doesn't really stand out as like particularly good or bad to me. It's just kind of there to, move the story along. For me, I've always really liked this, and it's just kind of stuck at the back of my brain, even though I've only read it one time. So it's had some level of an impact for me as far as Christmas stories go. I wanted to plagiarize them and steal this concept for hell because I fucking love it. And it's just it's a fun idea. It's a neat, clever little commentary. I don't know. I like this story for what it is and the unique point it tries to make. I'm sorry you guys didn't like it more.
I mean, I liked it. I don't think it's a bad story or anything. I just the dialogue was the big thing for me that just kind of pulled me out of it. I like, in general, the kind of tone this whole sort of story, the tone this whole thing has, and particularly the way Scott writes Santa in relation to what's his name again? Does he have a name?
Just narrator.
He's just narrator? Okay, I thought I was forgetting. The way he's talking to the narrator, I thought was an interesting interaction. I thought overall it was doing and saying a lot of interesting stuff, particularly as far as Christmas short stories go. And there is kind of a black comedy, Shane Black quality to this in places that I really resonated with. I just think that you could take this story and you could write it a little bit better.
I'd agree with that. I think
it's not a harsh criticism. I feel like if I was watching this as a film, I wouldn't be as apprehensive. It's just literally because I'm reading it. That's all.
Mm-hmm. And we have we ever talked about just a book or a short story before? We did a couple episodes a few horror months ago on famous horror short stories, and I think that was the last time we talked prose. Otherwise, I remember we did an H.P. Lovecraft video at one point.
Was that with Milan? I forget.
Yeah, that was forever ago. Neither of you were there. So yeah, it's been a while since we've done prose on the channel, and it's just not like does anyone here like think prose is their favorite medium? It's like
not even close.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can read a book. I don't enjoy reading prose that much anymore. I used to be into it, and then I discovered comics. I'm like, oh my god, this is so much better.
Well, I enjoy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to talk over you.
Oh no, you're good. I was just saying, I read constantly. I just don't read I don't read prose fiction as much as I used to. I'm reading a book every day, but it tends to be like a philosophy book or an article or something, you know.
Mm-hmm. Deadpool's all you were gonna say?
I was just going to say that with me novels, I still buy them on occasion if they really catch my fancy. But on a whole, I just prefer the visuals that comics give.
Yeah, me too. So it's weird to talk about prose because like I don't have much experience reviewing prose at this point. I've like not abandoned the form, but I don't go to it as much as I used to. Like I read a lot in high school, and then I kind of got out of high school and discovered comics and really got into it. But this is a story I read when I was reading a lot more prose, and like I feel like for a teenager I had good taste. There's something weird about being a teenager. You tend to read like really good books or really shitty books, and that probably defines the person you will become. But like I remember reading like a bunch of Hemingway and the classics. Like I read The Art of War at one point when I was in high school, and so like I knew what good prose writing was at that point because I was reading good stuff. I wasn't writing good stuff, but I knew what good prose writing was, and I remember reading this and like it didn't jump out to me as bad prose. That being said, reading it now, it's got a weird perspective because like the first, I want to say, fourth of it is like second person almost. It's a lot of you, and it's not that it's actually second person. It's not describing what you do as the reader. It's describing it's first person talking second person like someone telling a joke. And I don't know, that's strange.
It's awkward because it's so jarring when it suddenly grasps itself halfway through the story. Like it suddenly just goes back. It's like, oh, this is the narrator. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's jackknifed to suddenly be like, okay, you're suddenly realizing, oh, it's the narrator. We couldn't get this earlier. Okay.
Yeah, it can't be I thought I was good enough to make it into heaven. It's you think you're good enough to make it into heaven. You count on maybe, sliding through the cracks. And like that's, I mean, it's presumptuous on a lot of levels, but whatever with that. It's just like awkward, and it's especially awkward when it doesn't, how to put this, when it doesn't like continue that at all, when it just drops it. Like it doesn't feel like there's any natural place where it stops. It just ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the most awkward choice prose-wise, more than the dialogue. That is the one that stood out the most to me rereading it, opposed to the dialogue.
There's kind of a meta quality to it by the end, I think, and that sort of hurts the abrupt ending.
Mm-hmm.
Because he starts talking about the ability to tell a story by the end there, and it's not that it comes out of nowhere, but it seems like I genuinely feel like Orson Scott Card is a good enough writer that he cranked this out in a first draft. It feels like a first draft. Not in a bad way, but all of the problems I have with this are problems that you would fix if you went back and read it a second time.
I could see that. Yeah, I honestly could agree with you with that. Like, there are so many times where I'm reading a story by someone, I'm like, okay, this is a good first draft, and they're like, no, but I worked really hard on that. Yeah, you worked really hard on your first draft of it. And writing is rewriting, right? It's about going back and being your harshest critic. And I think a lot of people that say shit like, oh, I want to be a writer, just do not have the energy to, because you can work on your first draft for a year. That is not a rare thing among writers. You can work on your first draft for a year when it comes to a novel or even like an extended short story, and then you have to go back and rework it from the ground up. I remember when I was really getting into trying to write when I was younger, probably the greatest lesson I ever learned. I was kind of forced to learn by accident because I wrote like 3 chapters of this story, and then somewhere along the line in my horrible organization skills, because it was written by hand, because I'm an idiot, or I was an idiot, still an idiot, it was written by hand. Somewhere along the line, I lost those notebook pages, and I had to rewrite those 3 chapters. And the rewrite was significantly better. And I didn't learn that lesson until much later in retrospect. The rewrite was better because it was my second draft. I still knew what I did. I just went back and did it again, but better. Like, I just knew it was better because I read it. I'm like, oh, wait, this will make more sense if I do this.
Yeah.
And that's just, writing is rewriting is rewriting is rewriting. And I could agree with you. I would not be surprised if this was a early draft, if not a first draft.
Well, if that's the case, then this feels a little... Oh, what's the word I'm looking... This feels like... Did he even try, or was he just like, hey, I'm going to write this real quick, and, I'm Orson Scott Card, so suck my dick?
Maybe, I guess. I don't know, man. Let me ask you this. Do you think you would be at all, more accepting or more forgiving of parts of this if I just sent it to you as a .txt? I can't help but feel like the way in which I experienced this as almost kind of like early internet, what do you call those things? Is not creepypasta because it's not creepy, but those almost chain letter type things. The fact that this ends saying I'm a ghost and I fucking wrote this story and I'm spreading my message, and I never knew who actually wrote this story until years later. I think that helped it stick with me. Do you feel you would be more forgiving if you did not know who the fuck wrote this?
Probably not.
Really?
Well, I just wasn't. How jarring the changes midway to be like, oh, it's the narrator and the dialogue. It really just kind of set me off and turned me off to the rest of this story. I mean, it's short, and again, and like you said, it does feel like a first draft. And if that's the case, then there's another reason why I really have no love for Orson Scott Card as a writer. Aside from being a giant bag of dicks that he is, just put another dick in that bag.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't like Orson Scott Card as a person, and I think Ender's Game as a series, because that's all I've read by him. Well, no, that's not true. I've read Ultimate Iron Man. I kind of love Ultimate Iron Man. But between those two things, Orson Scott Card, I think, he's got a really particular kind of melancholy that I like and wish was channeled in a more moral direction than he channels it in. I feel like there are parts of this story that are almost weirdly inspirational and really resonate in more of that kind of lonely Christmas vibe, maybe, which is why I'm gravitating towards Shane Black in particular. Mm-hmm. It's just an issue of when you throw Orson Scott Card in, then I question how he genuinely feels or what he means by this kind of story. So Ultimate Iron Man is a really good story, and then you throw Orson Scott Card in there, and it introduces the problem of so now what or for Orson Scott Card, the only types of problems that exist are the types of problems for privileged heterosexual people like Tony Stark. But that's not a thing I come to think of when I'm reading it just isolated. And I kind of have that with this, where I think it's a really good idea, and I really, really like parts about it. Orson Scott Card's the big drawback, and the trends in his writing that just are always kind of flawed still tend to be flawed in this. I feel like you could give this to someone like Neil Gaiman and he'd punch it up.
Oh, easily.
Definitely.
I mean, Neil Gaiman's... I mean, yeah, you can give...
Maybe Neil Gaiman's
Neil
not a
Gaiman and it'll turn to
but
wine.
like Stephen King.
Yeah. That too.
I like it. I genuinely think this is a pretty good short story, and I think it's a good, unique idea, particularly in relation to the kind of commentary it has about Christmas culture and the way kids interact with it and who Santa is for people, especially as you're growing up. I think all that's genuinely good. I just think the actual prose is the thing that needs to be tightened.
No, that's fair. So let's move on from the prose and talk about the story and the characters themselves then, because we're dancing around Card, and I want to get through about half an hour before we get to Card himself, because I feel like talking about Card and the way in which he affects this story will take up a lot of time too.
Real quick before we go, because if I'm not mistaken, didn't he do a little bit? Didn't he write Superman or Action Comics during New 52 a little bit? Or am I?
He was going to, and there was like a whole controversy, and he got kicked off the book.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so the thing that sticked in my mind the most about this was that hell is a nightclub, and you don't necessarily get in. And I really, really like that.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, like, it's weird to think about this in relation to Card because he is such a fundamentalist Christian, but just on its own, that was such a fascinating idea to me for the longest time of, like, you got evangelicals for years and years saying, oh, if you don't accept God, you'll burn in the fires of hell for all eternity, and da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, okay, well, what if the worst case scenario is if you're not, like, an awful person, you just don't get into heaven. You just kind of, okay, fine, fuck it, shit out of luck. Like, what if that's it? Like, that's interesting. And what if hell's like, oh no, you gotta be really bad to get in hell.
Well, and also just the idea of, because he's thinking about these from the two extremes of, like, if you don't get into heaven, you go to hell. And he completely ignores the in-between, and the in-between is just living your life. And then the whole notion of, like, even in the afterlife, you could be kind of stuck just living your life. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a particular line where, let me actually find it. Okay, here it is.
F, Steve.
He says, daytime comes and goes, just like on Earth, and gradually it began to dawn on me that this was Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the idea that on some fundamental level, given the way hell and heaven work, and given the way a person becomes a person, it's not really heaven or hell, it's just another life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. I like the idea that to go to a better writer, it's almost like hell is other people or something.
Yeah.
And so the idea of just kind of like wandering around, and really, if we were to, cathologically dogma this bitch, he's in limbo, right? He's in that in-between place, because it seems like there's a chance that he could go to either or. And I really, really like just the way that they talk about heaven and hell in this, because it gets brought up so seldomly, but it's so damn interesting, wherein even after you die and you don't get into heaven or hell, people then try to get into both. So, like, the people preaching and talking about salvation on the streets, they're not actually good people. They don't actually think they're good people. They think they're better than everybody else. And that's a really interesting comment. And
that's so weird. Oh, sorry, Ian, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's so weird to me that it's Card doing this, because this feels so Gaiman-esque of the whole with the salvation part. It just felt like something Gaiman would write. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a... it just made me realize, oh, this isn't Gaiman. Someone else. It's someone else, and I don't like him.
Yeah.
It's got that Gaiman nuance, right? Like, it's almost like American Gods, where, like, he doesn't want to call him Santa because Santa's loaded with too much cultural background.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing I would expect Orson Scott Card to write.
It really isn't, and it's just interesting because I haven't read much Orson Scott Card outside of, like, I think I read one or two comics that he did before I really knew who he was, and then I just was like, oh yeah, well, fuck this guy, I'm not reading his shit. But it is really interesting to see how well this is written, and it seems to come from such just a stable-minded and well-balanced kind of perspective of, like, oh yeah, actually turns out hell's real, so's heaven, and it's actually really hard to get into either of them. So you're just kind of stuck on Earth again. Only now you don't get, any of the sensory stuff. You don't get smells, you don't get tastes, any of that stuff. You just get existence now until the end of time. Good luck with that. And I don't know, I really, really like that as a perspective of just, well, shit,
Basically going through life SOL, only literal this time.
Yeah. Also, like, we talked about some of the pros, and I will give some credit to some of the wordplay. Like, there are times where it feels, maybe if you didn't go through and repolish the whole story, it felt like parts of it were polished more, because there'd be moments where, like, he wanted to use a phrase, like, kind of a cliche phrase of, well, that's your life. And then it would be like, that's your ... death. And that's really interesting. Like, when he's talking to the bouncer, and the bouncer's getting annoyed with him, and the bouncer says, "For heaven's sake," shit, did I just say that? Like, that's really funny.
Yeah.
So there's moments like that, and again, just the idea that hell only lets you in if you're like Hitler. I really like that. Like, you have no idea. Bobby and I, like, had all these ideas for movies we wanted to make over the years. And one of them, I wanted to steal the concept that hell is a nightclub and it does not have to let you in. And have Bobby and I go off on an adventure as ghosts just trying to kill people so we'd be bad enough to get into hell. And have it just keep going wrong where we don't kill people, but we make people kill themselves by accident so it doesn't count.
The sad, really like meta weird thing that you bring that up, and the fact that this story is the whole hell is a nightclub. My cousin is doing a student film with this idea.
Oh, that's so fascinating that it's kind of like, generated for someone else. But yeah, like I just really, really love that idea. That has always stuck with me. What'd you guys think of the portrayal of Santa?
I loved it. I thought he was great.
You guys go on ahead. I'll throw in my 2 cents because I want to gauge what you guys think.
Okay, just keep going, Steve.
I kind of liked the almost biblical God quality of Santa in this, where Santa's not Tim Allen and Santa's not guy from Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. He's who he needs to be for the person that he's talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of this whole heaven and hell limbo situation being a metaphor for Christmas and making Santa the allegory for God itself is really interesting. Because I feel like if Santa was that purely jolly, optimistic type that you more often get, this character wouldn't talk to him the way he does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree. I quite liked that about him. I really, really like how this ends with Santa in regards to Santa.
In regards to Santa, yeah.
Just in general, I really like how this ends. But the Santa ending itself, I thought was really, really interesting. Where it's, like, it's the day after Christmas, and he goes, "You want to take the long walk?" And they're like, actually, getting to the light was not that hard. It felt like we were there before we knew it. And then Santa, like, goes into the light to try to get accepted into heaven, and he's there for the longest time, and you can almost, like, hope that you can almost see him getting ready to go in, and then he gets spit back out. And the long walk is the walk back. And that is great. That is a awesome idea. And then they talk about why in this version does
another
Santa...
year to go, right?
Yeah. Why in this version does Santa not get to go to heaven? Why is Santa in hell in the first place? Which is kind of what you ask yourself the second Santa shows up in the story. Why is Santa in hell? And he throws out the possibility, oh, maybe it's all the golden calf that I've become stuff. And then, like, the real answer you get is Santa's in hell because his work's not done yet. And he would be too selfish if he went to heaven. And man, that is beautiful.
Yeah. I genuinely like that. And I genuinely like the sort of, there's always another Christmas, there's always another year. there's always this constant renewal between heaven and hell that Santa's going through that everyone else does too. Taking it, I don't like a lot of overtly Christian fiction, but I feel like if this story was a allegory for Christianity itself, it's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Deadpoolzilla, what'd you think of Santa?
I thought the take on Santa was really interesting, and the end of it, of him thinking he can finally go to heaven and then go, oh nope, that ain't happening. That was one of the better parts of the story, is trying to figure out why Santa's in hell, because you never think to yourself the most pure image in your mind is in hell. So I think that was one of the better parts of this story for me, was the storyline with Santa and how it played out and what it means. Mm-hmm. Because, like Steve said, you could interpret it as either a religious allegory or an allegory for how we feel during every Christmas fucking season, where it's chaotic, you never feel like it's done, and by the end of it, you are goddamn exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that, and I liked the idea of Santa's mission in this is year round. It's not just Christmas time. That's really cool. I love the idea that Santa is out there stopping bullies and trying to help stop abuse against children and stuff. That's beautiful. That is like, because, you know, Santa is this really pure image for children, and I like the idea that he's always doing good for children year round, and he's not just sitting up in his workshop preparing for the next Christmas. I really, really like that idea. I love the subversion you get with this, where it's like, oh, what, so you tinker around and make toys? No, we mostly steal stuff. That's really funny. Oh shit, did I just give myself
it kind of makes the elves gremlins almost.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I think I just gave myself hiccups again. Fuck. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I like that quality. I like that ultimately for this story, the journey that the main character has is sort of like more of a realization of, it's like Saw, except if Saw didn't suck. Where like the whole point of Saw is people don't appreciate their life, so let's put them in a very near-death experience so that they do. And if that didn't completely suck and was handled in an interesting, unique way, then it would be this, where clearly this guy doesn't think about life and think about living and think about, particularly the way he rants about Christmas early on and the way he changes his tune later, kind of. This is clearly a guy that's kind of learning how to live after discovering he's never done living.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is that this is like a weird take on It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, it's literally the opposite of that. But in a cool way. We're like, it's literally the opposite of that by very literally inverting everything in that story, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And This is a Wonderful Life is my favorite Christmas movie, so I love it when anything does anything remotely like that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm starting to enjoy it. There's a lot to it that I feel like you could flesh out in, if not an adaptation, at the very least, like some kind of more comprehensive rewrite. But it's a really entertaining, really simple, but also really unique, just one and done Christmas story, particularly because it's not really a Christmas story. It's a near-death experience kind of thing that inadvertently becomes a very pure Christmas tale.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that about it. I think my only big issue is just the way some of that dialogue is written and some of the way that story is structured. The ending kind of just sort of happens. Not that it isn't fitting, the way Ian mentioned. It's just it's just over. And I don't know. I feel like there could have been a little bit more of a cool down process for the ending of that story.
Okay, that's why you didn't like it. Sorry, I had to go cure my hiccups real quick.
They're good.
Yeah,
It just kind of stopped for me, is all.
yeah, no, I get that. I like the, again, part of what sticks with me about this, and I really wish I'd, like, realized that it was Orson Scott Card before I picked it, and, like, kind of shocked you with that information, like, in the episode. That would have been great, because I would have loved to just send you this as a .txt, or send you it, like, some way that you wouldn't know who wrote it, the way I did, because that, like, mystery ghost ending thing is just so good. I love that about it. Like, that really stuck with me. Just the fact that I downloaded this and didn't really know where it came from or how I got it. The fact that I was just like, wait, what the hell's this? And I started reading it and I couldn't stop. And then with that ending of, like, I just found a guy who's left his computer on day and night, and believe me, it's easy to press keys on a computer. So I wrote this story, but now I got to get back to work, and, you know, so should you. That's a really, really cool moral, because it leaves it in this, like, you've read, like, the creepypastas and stuff where it's like it's doing things to your computer, or you know, reading the story is making things worse kind of thing, but you can't stop. This is like that same kind of technique, but used for a positive in a really, really cool way. And
Yeah,
getting
I feel that.
getting it through the internet without knowing who wrote it makes it so much better to me.
And then you do find out.
Yeah, and then you do find out.
And disappointment
Yeah.
sets in.
Yeah, Orson Scott Card kind of. He just needed to stop talking at some point.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else, like, immediately that you want to say about the story? We can cycle back to it, but I do think now would be a good time to transition, just talk about the author and how you feel about him in regards to this and that whole side of things.
Okay, so I think maybe this is an okay segue to that, but I think I am more okay with this story and supporting it, knowing it's by him, than I am with something like Ender's Game or Iron Man, because according to the site that I am reading this on, this is literally just a story he wrote for like a particular community website thing, and he makes no money off of it whatsoever.
That's good.
Like, it's just a thing he did. I don't even know if it's published in any of his, like, actual story collections.
Yay, good. Good to
So,
know.
like, I don't think you are, in some unethical way, supporting who he is by reading this.
That's good. And I will say, I like that the ethics presented in this, while, you know, vaguely Christian, are not wholly so.
Or not in your face.
Yeah, they're not exclusively Christian. They're just kind of generally good values, and they do not seem to connect to what his apparent philosophy is, which is nice.
Yeah. Even metaphysically, they're not very Christian, which is sort of interesting, knowing who he is.
Yeah. So okay, let's talk about Orson Scott Card. So when I was like trying to find this, and when I googled it and found it and picked it last week, I was like, oh, okay, so this is a story by Orson Scott Card. Wait, shit. Isn't he the bigot? That was like my exact reaction. And so Orson Scott Card is just one of those really problematic people, and I've been thinking a lot about authors and their stories, and we've done on Geeky Gentleman an episode about the idea of the author being dead. That is becoming a newly relevant concept with all the sexual assaults allegations out against different people as of late, and just in general, I really do. I've been heavily considering how much it matters what a person thinks versus what kind of art they make. And it is a perplexing issue, and I think this is a pretty good example with Orson Scott Card, because that dude has, you know, been a huge advocate for, you know, abolishing gay rights. He tried to, you know, fight against passage of gay marriage. Like, he legitimately provided financial support to the legal teams trying to fight gay marriage legislation back when that was going on. He's made statements just talking, like, what was it about the trans community? He said, there's a lot of mental illness in the trans community, and how do we know that they're all not just mentally ill? You know, we shouldn't bend our society backwards to accommodate the mentally ill in that way, to humor the mentally ill.
So he literally just killed 2 shitbirds with 1 stone in that sentence.
Right.
You know, he just basically not only insulted, you know, the trans population, but also the mentally ill. Good on you, you fat sack of crap.
Yeah, so, like, when you know all this shit about Orson Scott Card, you're like, fuck this guy. Just fuck this guy. But then, like, you're someone like me, and you read this story when you were younger, and you thought this was a good story, and this story has stuck with you, and you're like, oh man, I'm so disappointed that you can't live up to the values in your own books. Like,
Well, that's how I feel about Daredevil Born Again and Frank Miller.
yeah?
Yeah, that's another good one. Man, what if Frank Miller wasn't a sexist piece of shit?
Yeah, right? I don't know, like, it's this weird thing, and I just don't know how to feel about it. So, I don't know, what do you think, Steve?
I mean, I have a really complicated thing with the whole death of the author concept, because I feel like that doesn't actually work the way we wish it did. But that's more of a different topic that has more to do with, like, the way in which we talk about art in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you're critiquing something, the idea of the author being dead isn't a luxury you have, because then you're not really critiquing it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the sake of this, I think the most I can say with that in mind is this is the least Orson Scott Card thing that Orson Scott Card has done. And there's enough of a separation with that to where I'm kind of okay with it. There are things here and there that just come from, like, regular English of being kind of ableist and stuff, but nothing that is overtly him. Nothing that anyone else, person I like or not, has done at some point in their career. So and Orson Scott Card, like you said, particularly, he gives money to anti-gay lawyers. He holds rallies that are against the transgender community. He has a whole organization founded on, like, the sanctity of marriage and bullshit like that. So
Didn't he also support Mike Pence?
he did.
Yay.
He did. So no, as much as a piece of shit as he is and all the stuff he's done, almost none of that sees any contribution whatsoever from reading the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that about it. Where, like, Orson Scott Card's best thing is the thing that he in no way whatsoever benefits from.
Or actually, the better word should be, in no way the people he pays to destroy the rights of other people's, it goes to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to be fair, I've read literally 3 things by Orson Scott Card. I've read all of Ender's Game, I've read Iron Man, and I've read this.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those 3 things, this is my favorite.
Yeah, and I just want to talk more specifically about, like, you know, I was just curious to see if anyone else had ever talked about this, at least on YouTube, and so I googled Homeless in Hell, Orson Scott Card, and one of the first things that pops up is a Hank Green video. And I've got complicated feelings on the Vlog Brothers at this point in time, which is why I unsubscribed from them. But generally speaking, I like 2/3 of the points they make. I don't know. It's hard to put a value on it.
I like John Green. I don't like Hank Green.
Really interesting. Okay. Well,
yeah, we'll talk about that at some point.
Yeah, but Hank opens his video and he's like, so Orson Scott Card is a dick. And then he talks about how, but I really like his books. And I don't know how to feel about that, because his books are some of the most empathetic and emotionally raw and beautiful things I read when I was young. And I just wish he could be more like his books, because he's clearly not. And I kind of get that way with a lot of these things when and, you know, it's not rare. It's not rare among particularly writers, but all artists, to find, you know, some really shitty, disturbing behavior that's like not even illegal behavior, just like fuck you, dude behavior. Like, what was the episode of the Tom King comic reviews Steve and I did, where we opened it up talking about some poet was a notorious drunk because he's a poet, and they all are. And
we're talking about
yeah,
what was his name? Robert Frost.
I don't even remember. Someone left it in the comments of the video. If you want to go look through the comments for those real quick.
I can.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So
now.
there's this famous story of this poet, notorious drunk, and his daughter is graduating from high school, and she makes one request of him to just not be drunk at her graduation. And she goes to get him ready, and he's drunk, and she looks at him and says, I wanted just this one thing. And he looks back at her and says, you know, no one talks about Shakespeare's children. And that is just like the biggest asshole thing anyone could ever say to a child. Just the fuck you, dude.
Yeah, no, at that point.
Yeah. And that's all over the place. Like, fuck Alan Moore. Fuck Alan Moore. So often it is so disappointing to find out that these people who really do, you know, this sounds dirty, but touch you in a profound way, who pull at your heartstrings and
probably not the best words at this time of year.
Yeah,
Ian.
I know, right? Who pull at your heartstrings and make you feel ways that you didn't know you could about fictional fucking characters running around in a goddamn made-up world. There are these people who do these amazing things that really get at your emotions, and then you find out that they're just assholes at best sometimes, if not monsters. And you're like, fuck. So the question becomes, the hell do you do with that? Like, does it negate those emotions that you felt? Because I don't think so.
I think the problem... Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
No, Deadpool's all you go ahead. I'm curious what you got to say.
My thing is, and I did a video long time ago talking something similar about this, where, you know, you have all these great works by different writers, but yet they are, you know, they have their own personal lives and their own convictions and beliefs. And I think that is the thing where we hold these people to a certain gold standard, our gold standard, and we hope that they can, you know, that they share that. And if it's different, and if it's so drastically formed, then it damages not only, you know, our perspective of them, but also it damages our, you know, what we thought of their work previously. I mean, God, I love Born Again, but seriously, I can't read this without in the back of my mind going, this guy's an asshole, this guy's an asshole, this guy's an asshole. Or I could read Mark Millar, something from Mark Millar, and and then I have to think in the back of my mind, this guy is a dick. This guy is a dick.
Ah, shit! I didn't know Mark Millar was a dick. Fuck! I know Mark. Well,
he's not. Well, Mark Millar, he gets credit because he's actually like he knows when he's a dick and he stops.
Okay.
So he knows where to pull back his dickness. So I'll give him that. Anyway, but that's my thing, is that it boils down to don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is that Orson Scott Card was never my hero, and that guy can just eat all the horse cock in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Steve, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in between with both of you. Where like, it doesn't. The genuine emotions created by a work of art are not in and of themselves negated by the person who created them. I think art exists in a really particular way where it's generated by a particular kind of emotion the author has, and that emotion and the form of art is going to reach out to a person until they recognize and satisfy that emotion in some particular way. And regardless of how the author feels about it, at the end of the day, the morality, the politics, the artistic quality, all of those things that make art worth doing come from the people viewing it, not from the people making it. Mm-hmm. Not that they aren't part of the process, but they themselves are not the things that matter after a point. And after a certain point, when the art's already out, the artist's interpretation of it is just another one. It's not privileged because it's theirs.
Yeah, and that's the that's the author is dead right there.
To an extent.
Yeah. That's the thing that I care the most about when I talk about the author is dead. Let me put it that way. And you know, it's weird because you just don't know how to react to stuff like this. Like it's you know, I don't want to not be able to watch Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Like I like those movies. But now I know Johnny Depp is a wife beater. And I gotta live with that, and I gotta wonder, can I enjoy this?
It's the same reason why I can't really watch a Superman Returns anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and this isn't just, you know, people far out there. You know, this is something that I've been dealing with just over the last couple months. You know, I mentioned the H.P. Lovecraft episode earlier. You guys can go watch that if you want. I right now I'm having a hard time getting myself to listen to any old episodes of Geeky Gentleman with Milan in them. Since he turned into the fucking bastard he did. And I've told myself, well, he was my friend and he became someone else. People do change sometimes for the worse. And that's true, but doesn't change the fact that, like, even though it's not helping him in any way to listen to those episodes, it's just, it brings up a certain feeling in me where all I can think about is you were friends with this person, and that sucks. You know, there's this inescapable, like, there's this veil that's lifted once you know something really harsh about a person involved in any kind of project, and it's hard to go back and get that enjoyment, which is honestly, it's too bad, because again, so often I feel like if we talk about Orson Scott Card and we talk about this story, so much of this story is about not being a bully. Like, there's this whole section.
That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, there's this whole section in this story where he talks about, where the narrator talks about how he had a friend who was good at everything when they were kids, and the only thing he was good at was making fun of him for that. And he was kind of a dick, kind of a bully, and he regrets that. And this is why he hates bullies so much now. And you know, that's a really good lesson, because bigotry is bullying taken to a societal level. And Orson Scott Card is a bigot, and he needs to learn a lesson about bullying, and this is a pretty good lesson to learn about bullying. Why are his blinders on for himself? Like, so often, the people that are writing these or creating these really powerful emotional pieces that have these great messages in them, they're the ones that need the message the most, and it's like they don't even see their own point. Or somehow their particular hang-up is immune to this point. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know, like, how do I teach you the thing that you apparently already know?
And blatantly ignore.
Uh-huh. Like that, it's just hard. It's just this really profound thing where you're like, you know, to bring it back to the personal level, to bring it back to the show, to bring it back to Milan. You can go back and listen through episodes where Milan says some, you know, really profound shit that I wish I could just send to current Milan, but I know he won't fucking bother with it. Or he'll dismiss it and say that it's like, you know, he was crazy, or he was stupid, or he was just trying to fit in. I can't do anything to help that. And it's part of why I just fucking cut him out. You know, I don't... It's so strange when this goes just from being, you know, a about, like, art, about media, about things you consume, to being something in your real life. I know a lot of people that listen to this are younger guys, our age range or lower. You are going to have someone in your life who bothers the fuck out of you and who you admired at one point. You are going to have that if you have not already. And I don't really have any advice to help you deal with that other than to just cut people out. And I don't like doing that. I don't like the feeling of abandoning people. And that's kind of why I don't like the idea of just blatantly boycotting everything a person makes because they did something bad. I honestly believe that no one is their worst mistake. But at the same time, I don't want to support people who are committed to continuing that kind of thought process. And it's a hard fucking issue. Go ahead, Steve.
I think it's important to remember that who a person is for you doesn't belong to anyone else. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, for me, Joss Whedon was one of the most influential people in my life. I loved everything by Joss Whedon. He got me through high school in a very particular way. I rewatch Buffy and Angel every year. Age of Ultron, it's my favorite superhero movie still, and I spent 3 months of my life writing about that movie. It turned into a fucking 50-page, 2-hour video that has 4 million views. Like, that's a chunk of my lifetime there for that guy. And he's also a misogynistic asshole that multiple times cheated on and abused his wife. So, as much as that sucks, what Joss Whedon did for me and who he was for me and the things I get out from him, they're mine in a way that they aren't even his. And the way I read Buffy and the way I understand Buffy and the way I engage with and use that are not his. Mm-hmm. And supporting him isn't the same thing as appreciating what I'm appreciating about the stuff that he had his hands in. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't fix it, because you still have to talk about in the long term of, is it all right for you to spread this guy's word around now? And the best I can tell you is there's no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism. There just isn't. Mm-hmm. No matter how well-intentioned you are, there's no way for you to completely ethically live your life in relation to the horrible people around it. But you have control over the meanings in which you're taking these experiences. And that's what's going to count. So Orson Scott Card's a dick and an asshole, and I hate everything about him. But this story, the way I'm reading it, is not his. And it never can be. Mm-hmm. And so I would even retract a little bit of what you said earlier, where, like, I can explain to him what he already knows because he doesn't know it. I know it.
Okay. And see, that's really interesting. And I find just when arguing with people, one of the best things you can do is throw their own words in their face. Because people are great at slapping down your arguments. People are great about always finding some justification, some out as to why you're wrong. People have a lot harder time deciding why they're wrong. And you'll, of course, get people who hem and haw and bend over backwards to justify as exceptions and all this stuff. But the more you do it, the more you throw someone's words in their own face, the more likely they will be to have some kind of change. Even if that change is to say, no, I was wrong about that outright. And that's unfortunate, especially when it was the one time they were right.
Yeah. But
it's just really, really, it's a very timely issue. It's something that has definitely been on my mind lately. I mean, just everything lately has been going wrong. Joss Whedon, fucking, it all started with Bill Cosby and it's all gone downhill since then. And
honestly, though,
yeah, I mean, like, and so often we're so shocked by these kind of things, and we're like, fuck. And it makes me feel kind of irresponsible, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe Leonardo da Vinci, like, Crack did a great video where they said Leonardo da Vinci was a fucking mad scientist, evil bastard, and they showed you like all the forgotten plans that like don't get talked. Like everyone shows you like Da Vinci's design for a flying machine and a helicopter. No one shows you Da Vinci's design for a fucking army death machine, which he made because he was probably a fucking mad scientist. God damn it! But shit, right? Now the Mona Lisa's
cooler though.
Yeah, but now the Mona Lisa is ruined. Great.
Well, honestly, I really hope Jonathan Hickman writes a comic all about him now.
Right. No, but just like there's all kinds of shit like that. Like what's the only way that things can be safe now is if people start like anonymously posting. And that's gonna be scary. Like, and what's really, really worse is when you feel like you've got a good sense of a person. And this is where, you know, we have so many people coming out and saying these things like, oh, no, I know them. There's no way that's true. You know, I quite like a lot of the stuff I knew about George Takei. And then some allegations about George Takei came out, and I'm like, well, fuck.
Well, didn't they disprove that? Or am I thinking of someone?
I don't know.
No. He said that Russia is on some conspiracy theory to discredit him.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's that guy now.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem, is like, you know, in all reality, there is some remote possibility it's a lie. I don't think it's a lie. I don't go straight to that like everyone seems to. I take this shit seriously, and you know, people just tend not to lie about this to me. You know, I don't think when these things happen that they come out as lies.
Well, I want to throw out this slightly unrelated but still related statistic of the amount of allegations of sexual assault that are fake are like below 1%, which isn't even the surprising part. It's that they're below 1%, and that's the same as literally every crime statistic ever. Literally any false allegation the police ever get is in the same ballpark of below 1% reports are false.
Yep, that sounds about right. And so yeah, I just like to get more back to the point. It's really hard to like find that you admire someone and then find out that like they are kind of awful. And you know what it comes down to is, yeah, they're people. People do bad things, and
people are shit.
Yeah, and even the ones you really like, even, you know, this is the really, really complicated one. This is the hard step to make. The people that do bad things can still be right and good in some ways. And again, this is the really hard step. Follow me here. No one is the worst thing they've ever done. That does not mean that the worst thing they ever done is forgiven. And that's...
I'd like to... Oh, sorry, Ian, I thought you were done.
That's the hardest part, is it does not mean that it is automatically, like, the good that someone does does not automatically outweigh the worst thing they've ever done. It's a case-by-case basis.
To quote Einstein Kills, there exists no good, only unrealized evil.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, when we talk about Orson Scott Card, I'm like, you know, I didn't read Ender's Game. I didn't watch the movie because I just wasn't interested. I didn't know anything. I don't think I read anything of his all that much. Like, I think, again, I really think maybe one or two comics. And then I just started finding out about him during the big Superman controversy that Deadpoolzilla mentioned back in, like, 2013. And immediately I didn't want to read anything by him. And again, I was disappointed to find out that the story I liked was by him. There is always that knee-jerk, fuck, kind of moment when you find these things out about people that you admire some of their stuff. And it's disappointing. And I don't really got much else for it. It's just disappointing.
Well, and to bring it back to the story itself, but also... it's disappointing, particularly when something that they've done, not even their body of work, but just one particular thing that they've done has been very, very important to you. So like this story is for you, or like Angel was for me in high school, um, or Daredevil Born Again would be for you. Where like it's not even really them. It's that they somehow had a way to make you the person that you are, and you almost feel like you're a consequence to them, and that's problematic. But at the end of the day, as the story more acutely points out, it's just that matter of you have to keep going, and that your identity is always constantly being developed as you go, and that a person is who they are as they slowly learn to realize who they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that'll be a pretty good place to end. So let's go ahead and move on to a rating for the story. I'll go first. I'll go ahead and give this 4 out of 5 hellish bouncers.
I'll give this 3.5 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. Awkward cultural references. There's a lot of those.
Like
where they're
what?
just like, oh, so you're like Robin Hood. Or like, oh, you think this is Studio 54. Oh, you're a philosopher now. No one talks like this. Stop doing that.
And Deadpoolzilla?
I'm going to give it 3 horse cocks that Orson Scott Card can suck.
Damn. Really on the horse cock.
He'll remember it.
What do you think?
Orson Horsecock, and I kind of love it.
Wait, hold on. I've got a serious question here. What do you think Orson Scott Card is going to be more conflicted about, the bestiality or the gay part?
I bet it would be the latter. Because like for some reason I feel like it would be more the latter than the former. Because it'd be like, if it's a female horse, then I'll give it a shot.
All right. Steve, we need a discussion topic for next week.
A discussion topic for next week. Can we talk about Christmas music?
We already did.
You did?
Mm-hmm. We did an episode on Christmas
that.
music. Well, you were supposed to be there.
I have one, but it might be. I don't know if you guys would be into it. What if we talked about the 2 parts of Christmas Day and New Year's Day from Batman: The Long Halloween? Just those 2 issues in the storyline.
That's a review. We need a discussion.
Oh, sorry. I was.
What else is there?
How about the evolution of Christmas mythology? And if Christmas can count as a mythology.
It's up to you, Steve.
I think I'd be down for that.
Okay.
Yeah. We can talk about that. We can talk about a Christmas Carol in relation to that. That'd be fun.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Till next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Exile.
I am the Don Juan of Comic-Con.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
By the way, Steve, I was listening to you and Ian's review of Rules of Engagement, and maybe I missed it, but you guys didn't bring up the whole like horse with no name in joke in the comic.
Oh, you mean from because that's from Grayson, and I don't know if Ian's read Grayson.
I have not read Grayson, so I did not know what that meant.
Well, not just because of the Grayson thing, but the song from the band America.
I know the song. I just don't. I guess I didn't catch the joke. I rode through the desert on a horse with no name. Something, something, something. Feel the pain.
All right, that's not the lyric, but I'll give it to you.
Wait, isn't that the lyric? Isn't
I don't
it
think
something
that is.
Isn't feel the pain somewhere in the lyrics there?
No, it feels good to be out of the rain. That's the.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
this tells you how good a grasp I have on that song, and thus why I totally remembered it to talk about in a review.
Yeah, I was gonna say that did not sound like the song to me.
Oh, fine. Fuck you. I will have you know I posted a song that I sang impromptu on my channel today, and people said my voice was majestic. So, you know.
Were they high?